who will be assisting and facilitating this presentation. A few procedural guidelines to go over before we start. Please note that this presentation is being recorded. The recording will be published on our website for your reference at a later time. During the presentation, all the participants will be placed on mute. You will have the opportunity to share your comments or questions on the program at the Q&A sessions, which will promptly start at 7:30 p.m. We'll begin with the presentation now. Rachel, if you don't mind, can you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Typically, prior to pandemic, for a program like this, the public outreach process would consist of in-person open house events, wherein WETA staff will go with poster board of the program information to each of the service areas, and people will walk in to the events to provide their comments. This time, we are adapting to a virtual version of the open house. Once I finish the presentation, we'll begin Q&A sessions for the different services, which is the second part of this virtual event. The Q&A sessions will be conducted through Zoom and will promptly start at 7:30 p.m. today. You can share comments or ask questions on the program at that time. Our staff will be available in those sessions to take your comments on the program. I'll pull up the details of the joining the Q&A sessions right after this presentation. Please note that we will be posting the responses to the frequently asked questions on our website next week. If you're not able to join the Q&A session, you always have the opportunities to email your comments to recovery@sanfranciscobayferry.com. The last date to do so will be on March 25th. You can also provide your comments on our public hearing session, which will be held on April 1st at 1:30 p.m., which is a part of our board meeting. Next slide, please. So in February, our WETA board adopted 13 core principles, which addresses on how WETA plans to come back from the pandemic. The core principles of this pandemic recovery program are designed to stimulate ridership and broaden the appeal of the ferry to a larger cross-section of Bay Area riders. We have highlighted here some of the core principles that we believe directly correlate to the service and fare changes that we are proposing in this program. To summarize the few of the highlighted principles here, looking at number 2, we are making our fares more competitive with other transit agencies in the region. Number 5, we are enhancing service beyond the traditional peak periods to attract a broader range of riders in the Bay Area. Number 7, our fare, media, and payment will be tailored to match the shifting work patterns that we are anticipating during the pandemic recovery period. And number 8, our goal is in getting riders back to using our ferry system, and that stays our top priority as part of this proposed program. Overall, as mentioned earlier, our approach with this pandemic recovery program is to broaden the appeal of what we offer as a service. So the proposed program has 2 components. One is the service restart plan, and the second component is the fare structure that accompanies the service restart. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here's an outline of the proposed program. In terms of fares, we are suspending our existing fare structure for 1 year. And in place of that, there will be a temporary structure with the concept of lowered fares across all services. There's a lot of uncertainty over the next year as to how the economy and businesses will get back to normal and will recover. So WETA board and staff will monitor how the public respond to this program, and more likely at the end of the program, the board will take action for a longer term fare program. If they're not able to do that, the current assumption is that the fares will revert to the existing fare structure that we have today. In terms of our service restart, as you might already know, as of now, we have suspended service in some routes like South San Francisco and reduced service in other routes like Vallejo. Our approach in restarting service for a broader appeal is to adjust and balance trips throughout the day, which will be a change from what we did in the past. As to the next steps in moving forward with this program, at the end of our public comment period, the comments will be considered for any modifications on the program and will be taken to our board in April for consideration for adopting the final program. Pending board's approval to adopt, this program will be implemented in fiscal year 2022, which begins in July 1st, 2021 to June 30, 2022. Next slide, please. So as mentioned earlier, and to remind again, part of our public outreach process, there are a lot of opportunities for WETA writers and the general public to share their comments. We have listed those options here. After this presentation at 7:30 p.m., we will start the Q&A sessions for the different services. In a couple of slides, we will pull up the meeting details for joining those Q&A sessions. Our staff will be available to take your comments. So if you have any questions or comments on the program, please join the 7:30 p.m. sessions. You can also email us at recovery@sanfranciscobayferry.com. And as mentioned before, the last date to do so will be on March 25th. Again, just to remind you, there will also be an opportunity for you to provide comments at the public hearing session, which will be held on April 1st at 1:30 p.m. Next slide, please. So looking at the first component, which is the service restart component of the proposed pandemic recovery program, this slide outlines the features of the service restart plan. Before pandemic, our service was oriented towards the demands from peak periods of the day, which is 6 to 9 a.m. in the morning and 4 to 7 p.m. in the evening. And it was primarily oriented towards commuters going to work in San Francisco. We also had a limited service in the middle of the day and later in the evening. The changes we are proposing are basically restarting all the suspended services, namely South San Francisco and Harbor Bay. Adjusting peak period service depending on the ridership demand, and increasing midday service system-wide. For example, Richmond and Harbor Bay will now have midday and midday service, which will be between 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're also proposing increased late night service compared to what we had prior to pandemic. We believe these enhancements will accommodate the shifting commute patterns we anticipate during the recovery period. Say, for example, for people commuting 2, 3, or 4 days per week, and also for a broader market, such as those who will be traveling for other reasons, for reasons other than work. There will be a limited weekend service in 2021 and enhanced service in 2022. For the special events, the restart of baseball game service will depend on when there is full capacity allowed at Oracle Park. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines the fare component of the proposed program. As mentioned before, we are temporarily suspending the existing fare structure for 1 year, and the proposed fare program will be active for that 1 year. After the end of the 1 year, which is June 30, 2022, we will revert to our existing fare structure unless board takes action. Our primary focus on this proposed 1 year fare structure is the concept of lowered fares, and it also ties to our core principle of broader appeal and making it more competitive with other transit options available in the region. We looked comprehensively at what other transit agencies in the region charge and proposed fares that are in general consistency with those comparables. As we aligned with other transit agencies, we also considered a few secondary goals for bringing consistency and simplicity across fare products and services of WETA. This is expressed in a zone structure on the next slide. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, we simplified our fares by grouping them into these different zones and have all the fares for all of WETA's services in this one table. Pertaining to consistency and simplicity, we saw an opportunity to better align the discount, align our discount programs, such as senior, disabled, Clipper Start, aligning those discount programs with what other transit agencies in the region are doing. Say, for example, instead of offering discounts only off of cash fares, which are, by the way, referred here to paper tickets, we are proposing discounts off paper ticket for paper ticket fares and discounts off of Clipper for Clipper fares. Another example is we proposed slight adjustment in the Clipper Start fares such that it aligns with what other transit operators who are participating in the Clipper Start program are doing. Next slide, please. So this will be the last slide of our presentation, and we are wrapping up here. If you have questions or comments on the service or fare changes, please join the upcoming Q&A sessions, which will promptly start at 7:30 p.m. There will be 4 Q&A sessions, one for Vallejo, one for Richmond, third one for South San Francisco, and a fourth one for Alameda, Oakland, Seaplane, and Harbor Bay, given that those services have the same fare structure. The details on how to join the Q&A sessions are available here. It is also posted on our website at sanfranciscobayferry.com/recovery. You can also dial in to join these sessions. Please enter the meeting ID and passcode that you see on the screen if you're calling by phone. As mentioned earlier, the recorded presentation will be posted on our website. So if anyone did not have a chance to attend this presentation, please refer to the published recording. One of us, either me or Rachel, will be available here on this meeting link. If anyone joins here, let's say after 7:30, we will provide instructions for them on how they can attend their preferred or a specific Q&A session. Thank you all for joining, and thanks for your time.